Good morning, you guys. Good morning. I wanted to come and talk to you guys about the documentary, the 50 Cent documentary on Netflix, The Reckoning on P. Diddy. And so I watched all four parts. I watched it the day it came out. So I think that was Tuesday. But I was kind of busy yesterday. And so I had some time today. I'm away for work, but I had some time in between meetings in order for me to talk to you guys. So I wanted to come talk to you guys about the documentary and then maybe get some feedback on what you guys think about it. So as far as presentation goes, I think that the documentary was well put together. I think honestly, so just from off rip, I think some of the feedback that I've gotten from people in outside of my virtual life, in my out in the world life, some of the people anticipated more salaciousness, I think, because of who was in charge. But I think that we forget sometimes like the serious nature of someone like a 50 Cent and the type of producers, directors, and creatives that he works with. They are very professional. And so I think a lot of us underestimated like that piece of him, that business aspect of him. And we expected to see like a whole bunch of pettiness. I didn't expect for him to give us anything less than this type of professional product. I didn't think that we were going to get a whole bunch of Jaguar right junk, right, from a 50 Cent. Despite whether or not people think he's on a type of patty, yeah, he's the patty king, but he's a professional patty king, right? And so everyone that he works with are top-notch professionals. And I don't think that the project would have any other project that he's worked on. I don't think it would have been taken as less serious as this one, especially. I think that he wanted to make sure that he had all of his ducks in a row. And so I think, like I said, I think people expected to get that performative side of 50 Cents, that interview style, that jokester, the Twitter and Instagram 50 Cents, but we forget what type of professionalism he brings to this type of business he's in. He's been in the business of making film, movie, series, and he brought that level of professionalism with him to this project. And the type of people that he had signed on to this project also have that same level of professionalism. And so I think that is why, although people wanted to see more of the Twitter, Instagram 50 Cent, I think we saw a more professionally put together product, better product, a well presented product in front of us, right? So for some of the people, like I said, I know that I spoke to like some of my friends and stuff, that like I said, the part of the disappointment, they thought they were gonna see some more salacious gossip. They also thought that they were gonna kind of see things that they had not heard before. I think the pieces of the documentary that we see are actually the visuals. Um, I think that was the part that we never saw or heard before. The footage that was obtained prior to Diddy being arrested. Some of the footage of Cassie um, and him actually being in that room with Cassie and Ryan Leslie, and you being able to pay attention to his demeanor in those situations. I think that the footage is what we saw. And I think that because it was not information based, but there were visuals, I think that that is the reason why people think that there was nothing new brought to the forefront too much. But it was a documentary. And so I think that he was highlighting what can be based in some facts, based on either the people who were there at the time or the visuals that he was able to obtain, the information he was able to obtain. And so then that brings me to the issue of people with the cease and desist, right? So, um, we all know Puff has managed to get his way out of all types of legal calamity, right? But I think that 50 Cent is a formidable opponent, right? And so I don't think that this project would have been moved, people would have moved forward with this project, or 50 would have moved forward with this project, not knowing that he had all his ducks in a row. Um, I don't think that there is much, if anything, that 50 Cent is, I mean, I'm sorry, that Diddy and his legal team are going to be able to do in order to deal with what they have done in this documentary. Um, from what it appears right now on its face, it appears that the footage was legally obtained. And the thing I found strange is that you have some characters out here who do content creation who believe that people should be able to access public information. And this is exactly what 50 Cent did. However, he did it, right? So whether it was through FOIA requests, whether it was through the fact that this was footage that was obtained through someone that Puff did not pay, and then he decided to pay for the footage. However, it was obtained, it was legally and publicly obtained. And it was at that point, it would not have been considered private information. And so, if people think that they can monetize and profit off of public information by requesting FOIAs and things of that request, then why would it be any less for someone like a 50 Cent, right? Why would it be less for him or for Netflix to be able to go obtain this public information? So there are some who say that some of the information may have been obtained from the devices that were confiscated by Puff. And so that some of this may have been FOIA information that was made available. And then other information may have come from the fact that Puff did not see through in payment for someone who he hired to capture this footage of him in a documentary or docu-series that he planned to do himself after this was all over with. And so it's possible that either Netflix or 50 Cent or Netflix by way of 50 Cent or 50 Cent by way of Netflix obtained this information. And so this is how this was information was these visuals, the video, the photos, all of these things were obtained to complete the documentary. And so if people believe that it's okay for them to obtain public information the same exact way, why would it be any different from someone like him? And it sometimes seems like that there's a different level and standard when someone is dealing with somebody of celebrity status than when they're dealing with a regular citizen, just a lay person, a regular person in society, right? Of accessing information. The same way that the information can be accessed when it comes to um, a layperson is the same way that information can be accessed when it comes to someone who is of a celebrity status. And so, however this information was obtained, I'm almost confident that whatever 50 Cent and Netflix did, it was above board. And I don't think that these cease and desist are going to go that far. In addition to that, I think it may be some danger in Puff trying to pursue um, some of this legally, civilly, if need be. And some of the danger could be about the fact finding, right? The fact finding that would need to be necessary in order to determine whether or not any of these things were defamatory, um, whether any of these individuals who are on this documentary are not telling the truth, whether it was presented in a way where they know these people weren't telling the truth. In that fact finding mission, it could open him up to further litigation. And so, because just as there's information that would need to be obtained on the side of those telling the story, there would be information that would need to be obtained from his records and from him as well. And so, and he would be putting himself and others in the position to be potentially deposed and placed under oaths, and this could open him up to further scrutiny. And so I don't know whether or not that would be worth it in the end. There were some receipts that were shown, especially a receipt that was shown around when Kurt Burrows he was speaking about the Tupac situation and the questionability about whether or not Puff had something to do with that. And he talked about all of at the last minute how Puff wanted all of them to drive to the fight and all of these cars and what needed to be done to arrange that to happen. And so, like I said, in a fact finding mission to determine whether or not these individuals who are giving this information on the documentary are being truthful, and whether or not the producers, directors, and 50 Cent himself know it to be truthful, it might open them up to Puff to more scrutiny. And so I don't know that moving forward with any type of legal action would be to his benefit. Um, when it comes to that. Another thing I found interesting in people's responses to 50 Cent in the documentary is, of course, the tension that is everlasting between Puff and 50, right? And so many people look at it like, oh, 50 Cent's just upset because Puff took his girl and then all of what he did and all that stuff. Well, the reality is that Daphne was not with 50 at the time that her and Puff get together. There is testimony on record where Daphne Joy confirms to Puff that her baby daddy is his arch nemesis, right? One of his biggest rivals. She references 50 as the baby daddy. She does not reference him as her man. By this time, 50 and Daphne are not together. In addition to that, they've gone through a custody dispute, which kind of did place Daphne Joy in a vulnerable, probably a vulnerable economic situation, because she cited herself of money that she was getting from 50 voluntarily by trying to get additional monies. And so the tension between Daphne and 50 Cent was already there at the time that she starts to have these encounters with Puff. So it wasn't necessarily a stealing of his baby mama. He was done with her at this point. I think even at that point, the allegation of a domestic dispute between the two of them had happened already, and so it was that was already done. I think when people take it up for Puff and his need to always have somebody else's woman, old woman or current woman, a lot of men take up for him in that respect. But I want to know why men don't see this as suspect, because this man is always going after somebody else's woman. He's always having somebody else's a woman or ex-woman in his sights. And I think this is one thing that 50 was able to illustrate in the documentary without using the reference to his own baby mama. And then another one that he left out was Tupac, the reference to Tupac and the woman that Tupac had been with, who Diddy has a child with. And so while people are criticizing 50 for, oh, this is his ultimate get back because of what Puff did with his baby mama, Puff had a history prior to Diddy's baby mama of doing this, of trying to acquiesce someone else's woman or ex-girl. And through the documentary, this is illustrated without 50 having to illustrate his own baby mama in the mix. Every woman that is highlighted in this documentary by 50 belonged to someone else prior. Well, let me not say belongs to someone else, because the woman's not should not be considered property. But they were the woman of someone else or the ex-woman of someone else, starting with Misa Hilton, right? And so you see this man who is always trying to gain something off of someone else. 50 also demonstrates that by showing how he's always trying to be a succubus and pulling out people's star quality. Yes, he made a lot of stars, but they did not live like stars, because this man sucked all of the talent and he profited from these people's talent, right? They showed that. Like, you have these artists, Craig Mack's baby mama, who said the man pulled off $100 bill. Like, why don't men look at this like it is something wrong with a man who does this to people, right? Who just sucks everybody around him dry. Like, you see so many men so willing to take up for Puff's predatory practices. And his predatory practices are not just to these women. These artists are on here and they are confirming that his predatory practices extended even into his business practices. And so everybody cannot be lying about this. The other way we know they are not lying, because you can look at the lifestyle of the people around him to confirm that these are not lies, that they were destitute, that they did not have money. There are too many artists around him saying that. So he was a succubus in that way, whether he was sucking a woman from someone, whether he was sucking the talent from his artist, whatever it was, he was always sucking something to his own gain. right? He was always taking and sucking out something from someone so that he can maintain this state of of um of youthfulness, and then everyone else is left out to dry, right? This is what we see, and I think that 50 Cent did an excellent job. His producers, directors, the people at Netflix, they did an excellent job of framing that it was not just the women, that they were people. He did this to the people who worked with him. He did it to his artists, and that he was not the real talent. He knew how to find talent and use it to his advantage, and for him to be rich and successful. But that successfulness and that rich lifestyle did not apply to everyone around him. Um, when he talked about the Biggie contract, when Kirk Burrows talked about the Biggie contract, I wanted to talk about that because there was also a mention of Puff when he did Making the Band and how he set these contracts in front of these young people, told them they only had 24 hours for somebody to review the contract. Well, who's going to review it? Like, these are people who are come from all different types of lower levels of walks of life, who don't have this type of lawyers to sit down and look through that, who are being given this one chance of a lifetime opportunity. So who are they going to get through, look through that? Of course, they are going to sign, right? But I think the most nefarious thing was when Kirk Burrows talked about the Biggie contract. And I think that this is a window um, into what he could have potentially been doing to others, right? When Kirk Burrows said that they had done a contract prior to Biggie's death, that they had done a contract that gave Biggie all the things that he wanted. And then the next thing you know, Biggie dies. And then in order to cheat Biggie's estate, Puff decides that he's going to alter the contract, but he changes the pages in the in-between because since Biggie had already signed the last page, he changes the in-between pages. A lot of these artists that he got probably don't even know if they were victims of the same exact shit. So the contracts that may have been presented to them at the time of signing might not be the same ones that he entered on file. And this is how they may have been cheated. And this is the type of predatory behavior that may have been used on them as well. Like, that was, I thought that was so, I had never heard that before. Now, maybe that was already out here. I don't know. Maybe I'm new to the party on that. But I had never heard that Diddy had them to remove the pages in the in-between of Biggie's contract. That he agreed to give Biggie all of what he was asked, what he was asking for to sign back to Bad Boy, and then he changes the pages of the in between of the contract when Biggie dies. So there's another thing that most people paid attention to, and that was the funeral, Biggie's funeral, and the allegation that it was charged to Biggie's estate. So the Breakfast Club, I'm not sure if it was yesterday at some point or if it was this morning. I don't know, but I saw it a few minutes ago. The Breakfast Club came forward with some information from Biggie's estate saying that they confirmed that the monies for the funeral were not paid through Biggie's account. But that is not really what the documentary alleged. That is not what Mark Burrows said. I mean, Kurt Burrows said. I'm sorry, not I'm getting Mark Curry and Kurt mixed up. That is not what Kurt Burrows said. Kurt Burrows stated that Biggie's estate was going to be charged for it. So the way that Puff rearranged things, he made sure that it came from the Biggie estate. And with all of the turmoil that has gone on with Biggie's estate recently, especially in the passing of his mother, unless it was coming from his mother, unless the statement was coming from his mother, if she, rest in peace. But if she was still alive, I would believe her. if she said that no, Puff paid for that funeral, no, Biggie's estate was not charged for this in any kind of way. I will believe her. But I don't believe the voices coming from that estate right now. Because there's been a lot of turmoil going on with Biggie's estate, with his son, being in charge versus other people who have tried to strip his son of being in charge of his estate. Like, I don't trust words coming from people that's not Biggie's mama. And since Biggie mama ain't here to confirm it, and because we all know how Biggie's mama felt towards Puff, I don't believe it. I don't believe no statement going to nobody about that. What Kurt Burrows alleged is true to Puff's form. He did not make an allegation against Puff about that funeral that I don't think if anybody was saying it in all of their truthfulness could not see Puff doing. I think everybody can see it. And there is a reason why Big's mom felt the way she did towards Puff. Like, there are things that she did not come out full-fledged and said, but there were things that she did say. And so there are things she could not dispute. There are things that she could not dispute because she was not the signer of the contracts. But I think that she knew well enough to know that this man was raping her son financially in his life and in his death. And she was adamant about that. And so I wholeheartedly believe the allegation made by Kurt Burrows that Puff did what he needed to do to make sure that he recouped that money. We see him do that with so many of his artists. And one of the artists in the documentary, hey Red Bunny, how you doing, boo-boo? So one of the artists in the documentary was Kalina. I think Harper is the last name. So everybody knows that, okay, from the start of the Diddy allegations, even up into this documentary, that Kalina still expresses her love for Puff. She was the other member of Dirty Money. So you had Dawn Richard, who is the one who places a civil claim against Puff. And she was the member of Danity Kane, which was one of his Making the Band groups. And once Danity Kane was dissolved, she goes into this group Dirty Money with Puff and Kalina Harper, the other band group member. And from the moment of the investigation all the way up until now, hey Mella, how are you, boo? From the moment of the investigation, even up until this documentary, to this day, we don't hear Kalina say anything negative about Puff. And this is the thing that I think that is so hypocritical of the people who say that both sides are not told on this documentary. I think that there was an opportunity for both sides to tell a story. I think the people on the opposite side elected not to tell their side of the story, right? You said you see Keefe D trial date is now pushing. Yes, Ray Bunny. I'm a touch on that too from the documentary because that's also touched upon in this, and something that I suggested is also kind of confirmed through the documentary in reference to Keefe D in that investigation. But I want to get this part out first because you see some people being not truthful in their presentation of how they present content. And they want to say that both sides are not told in this documentary. I think that there was an opportunity for both sides to be told in this documentary. And I think for the fact that we see Kalina in this documentary, that is evidence that both sides were made aware and given the opportunity to be involved. Kalina, from the time of the allegations, said she never witnessed any of these things that were alleged. Now, whether she's telling the truth or not, that has been her story. And she was given an opportunity to tell it in this documentary. I think that other individuals on the opposite side who could have spoke their piece decided not to speak their piece. And that does not mean that the work doesn't go on, right? Just because the opposite side decides not to come contribute does not mean that you don't move forward. So the individuals who were given an opportunity to come forward and to speak. Misa Hilton confirms she was contacted. She elected not to speak. And the Breakfast Club made some interesting statements about what Misa said. And I found it interesting what she denied, but what she refused to comment on. Right? That's what you always have to pay attention when the other side gives a statement after the fact, right? So she confirms that she was contacted. She confirmed that she was given an opportunity. She confirmed she declined. She she said to Lauren in the Breakfast Club that she did not want to revisit that part of her life, that she did not know why she needed to be made a part of it, that she does not want to go through that, that the family has already gone through enough. So she did not want to confirm some of the abuse accusations. She didn't deny the abuse accusations, but there were certain things that she did want to correct, and I found that interesting. So the fact that she corrected the order in which Eric Sermon described the event between him and Puff when she was sitting in his car, and she wanted to say, well, all of that wasn't told accurately. She paid attention to the most minute detail to debunk that, to give a sense of ambiguity, right? But to me, that was more telling of what she was not denying, more so than what she was correcting. Because why wouldn't you deny the most serious accusations if they were not true, right? That's my opinion. So she decided to find the most minor detail about Puff playing Biggie's song for him in the car after they were about to have this physical altercation, him and Eric Sermon. She decided to correct that by saying, well, Biggie would not, at that time yet, the album had not even been up for being released, or something she corrected to that effect, right? But she refused to discuss anything else. So she found the smallest detail that she could deny, but refused to comment on the rest. And I found that interesting, and it was more telling of what the other accusations were and giving more validity. Her choice to do that, to me, gave more validity to the other accusations than it did to the ones that she wanted to correct, right? That's just my opinion. But back to Kalina. So Kalina states in there that she had gone to Puff at one point in her time of need because she was dealing with a custody issue with her children. And she needed money for her to pay legal fees. And the amount of money that she needed was $5,000. And she went to Puff as her friend. And Puff refused to give her the money, right? Which some people might justify. They may say that, it's all good. This is my thing. If you look at the type of money that Puff was bringing in, when you look at the deal that he had with Ciroc and how Dirty Money had some affiliation with that, there should have been no reason that Kalina needed to go to Puff for $5,000 for legal fees. This shows you, and a lot of people might say, oh, well, it's poor money management on the part of her, maybe. Like, nobody knows what she was getting, how much she was getting paid. It was poor money management on her part. But we can surmise through the accounts of all of these other artists and their spouse how artists under his record label were being raped. We see how Jada Kiss and the other members of the Lox came after Puff, at Hot 97 over monies owed to them. We see Mace coming after Puff. We look at what happened with Craig Mack, and we see his wife giving an account on this very documentary of him needing money and Puff taking out a wad of money and peeling off $100 bill. So we can't say that all of his artists had poor money management. This had to do with their contracts and how they were getting paid, period. This wasn't poor money management on the behalf of every last one of these artists. And so, if, yeah, Mace too, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, Miller. So that's what I'm saying. You cannot look at all of these people and say, oh, well, they just didn't know how to manage it. No, this was contractual issues that he had with every last one of them. It is seen. He tries to rectify it right before he goes to jail by giving them back all the rights to their music. Like, he knows he was raping them. So he tries to create a new image by doing that. So we see this man's predatory behavior, and we see his attempt to try to correct this predatory behavior. And what this documentary showed us, that it was all in the effort to change his image in the media. It wasn't because he was no good person. What 50 Cent was able to capture by this visuals that he was able to obtain, that everything he was doing was because he was worried about, if he had to go before a jury of his peers, what would he look like? The man says it in the footage that 50 Cent was able to obtain in this documentary. So we no longer have to question whether he did this out of the goodness of his heart, whether it was good natured. We know the motive. We know the reason why he was doing these things, right? So it wasn't just about poor money management, but she asked him for this money, $5,000, for so that she could get her kids, so that she could pay for the legal fees to get her kids. And he told her he couldn't help her. He had something else he was doing, and we couldn't help her. In the same documentary, we hear a recording of him telling Little Rod he can't pay him the money that he owes him for producing the Love album. Like, so this is not everyone else. This is not everyone else. People need to stop this foolishness, right? People need to stop trying to give this man such good character qualities and then diminishing the character and qualities of everyone else, right? It just doesn't make sense. It does not add up with all the accounts that we have seen throughout the history of his rise to power, and even now in this moment, right? It just does not add up. And so she asked him for this money. He declines to give her the money. Months later, he's calling her to be his spokesperson and begging her, and knowing that she is on a list to be a potential witness, knowing that he's not supposed to be contacting her. He says that. He prefaces that in the call. So he has enough confidence in her as somebody who loves him that she's not going to even let people know that he's calling her to ask for this favor, because he's declaring in the beginning of the call that he knows that he's not supposed to be calling her. He knows that she's a potential witness. He calls her to ask her to do this favor. He has enough confidence in her that he knows that she will do it. He says to her in the call, I know that if I die today, you would jump in the casket. And she chuckled in the midst of her tears while she's giving this statement on the documentary. In the midst of her crying, she laughs and she says, yup, I would. Still to this day, I would. So this is not a one-sided story. This is not a story that is being told by people who did not love this man. This is a story that is being told about people who were used by this predator. And that is the lens that, to me, in my opinion, that is the appropriate lens in which this story was told through. It was not told in a biased way. It was a story told about a predator, and a man who was a predator in a way that was not just towards the women in his life, but it displayed itself in every aspect of his life. You said, I don't like that man at all. I hate him with every bone in my, my body. And this is the thing, Red Bunny, I don't hate him. You know, people might think that in the way I present information, that might be how it appears. But I don't hate him. I just think I have a realistic way of looking at him as a person, right? Um, I'm not going to ever deny I see what I see. I'm not going to ever deny that I hear what I hear, right? I just have a realistic way. I don't hate him. I think it's sad. I think it's very sad. And because I'm always trying to examine people for some sense of humanity, I think that part in me looks for, where did this go bad in him? Where did he go this bad? At what point did this go bad? And I think that even the documentary might have given us, or wants to open the door to what about to that. Like, I think that people would be really interested in hearing, Puff, what made you like this? I think he would be more redeemable. I think people would have more compassion if he was willing to open up about more of his backstory, the real story. But I also believe that some of the reason why he might not be willing to open up about that is because I think that despite how people, characterize the relationship between Puff and his mom, I think that some of that story, people may, people may, I think he would be more concerned the light it will put his mom in. How? Because you hear some of the things already being said about his mom, right? So I think that he would, in some sense, I think he would rather take the blame than for anyone to have any additional information that could be used against his mom. Because there's information that people are using to say that his mom is the culprit for why he is already. And so to give more insight to his story, would potentially put his mom on the chopping block even more. And I think that's something that he protects. You say, I know those are strong words, but I can't. Yeah, everybody, you have the right. Everybody has the right to have a different outlook. I'm just saying, I'm not there. You know what I'm saying? I know that sometimes when people hear me, hear my opinions on something, they may think, because of how strongly I voice my opinions, that that's how I feel about something or individual or topic or whatever. But that's not necessarily the case, because I'm always looking for the humanity in a person. You know what I'm saying? At some point, I always look at it like, at some point, this person was a decent human. When did that leave? Some people, it leaves in childhood, and then some people, it happens later on in life. But I always try to, it's like I want to go back to that moment, because what can we look at in that moment and examine in that moment that may not have brought us to here? And I think that those are the things that prevent us from other people falling into the same trap. And I think that's why it's important for us to examine it. And that's what I think was so star quality about how this documentary was done. Like I said, a lot of people felt it was boring because they felt like it was not the salacious 50 Cent that we see on social media. But I think that this was very informative for some of us who needed more insight, who needed to know, has Puff changed? Those visuals, that footage that 50 Cent has of Puff prior to him, that lets us know this is all the act. This is still part of the act. This is all still part of the act. So all of those people trying to frame this like, oh, he's a changed person. Oh, he's so sorry. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's that. No, everything is about optics. Everything is about what it looks like in the media. You hear him on there telling Mark, not Mark Geragos. What's the other crooked ass one? Um, Mark Geragos, I think, is crooked too, in my opinion. But the one that was uh the with the other lawyer, you hear him telling him, this is this is the space you're in, and in the space you're in, you might not be hearing this, but you're not looking at this space and that space in order to determine what is being said. And this is what we got to get into the mind of these jurors. Like, that was all he's worried about, getting into the mind of these jurors, flipping the mind of these jurors. So just like people try to accuse the feds and the prosecutor's office, and all of these people are trying to tank the jury, Diddy in real time is telling you how he's trying to put on this media blitz to tank the jury. He wants to place things in the media. He is telling them, go get whoever you got to get, whether it's the top people in this country or another country. And then that brings me to something else, Red Bunny, because remember, like, all of this crazy ass, salacious ass bullshit that was going on in the social media space about all of these allegations against him. And we were all floating around like, who's doing this? Somebody is orchestrating this. And people wanted to automatically assume, oh, it's coming from the feds. Oh, they are plant. They are this and they that. Well, I always considered the fact that maybe this is a Diddy plan. Maybe this is a plan on the behalf of the defense. Everybody always wants to assume that the enforcers of the law, that the implementers of the law, right, are the ones who are planting people. But there are plants that come from everywhere. And when he's saying that part in the footage, I'm like, this kind of further adds some fuel to the idea that he was planting some of this out here to confuse people on who was really a victim and who wasn't, to desensitize people and make them believe that, oh, there are no real victims, to skew the stories of the real people who he had done stuff to. Like that was always one of my theories. And his comments at that moment kind of solidify that. He tells him, go get whoever you gotta go get, whether it's in this country or another country. Well, goddamn, Sean Atwood is in another country. And yes, we know that these supposed lawsuits or a threat to file a lawsuit or a threat to cease and desist and all of these things have been sent to these people. But how do we know all of this was not well orchestrated? That's what you got to do to make it look a certain way. So we don't, while the allegations and the dirt was thrown on the behalf of the prosecution team and the feds, that they were putting these people out here, how do we not know now from what we are hearing from this footage that it was not a plant from the defense, that this was not part of their strategy from the beginning? From the beginning, we hear Diddy, right, you got to get on, we got to do something. Hire whoever you got to hire, right? This is what we are hearing. So I'm not convinced that some of these people out here were not paid. I absolutely believe that that was the case, that they were paid to come out here and create this confusion and chaos. The stories that were being told were too crazy and outlandish and just, I mean, the shit we heard in the courtroom was crazy, but it was nothing compared to what we saw in some of these lawsuits. And it was so crazy because this is the thing. And this is my opinion, he had to make the shit crazy because the shit we heard in the courtroom sound crazy. So you had to make it wilder than that in order to numb people or bring it down when people hear the real account, the real story in the courtroom, right? So that's just my opinion. I think that that gave some validity to that. So now, Miller and Red Bunny, onto the Keefe D thing, right? So this also gave some confirmation to one thing that I felt about with the Keefe D situation. I felt like, so I always felt like when the feds went in on Diddy, that it was kind of premature. I felt like it was like a premature thing they did because they had not finished all of the investigation. And they had said that they were still investigating, even though they went in, they were still looking into more allegations and stuff like that, right? I think it's just my opinion that they were worried about, okay, will he go leave? Will he go to another country? And I felt like it was something more serious that they were trying to investigate in reference to bringing charges against him. And but they had to move on what they had at the time because they were worried about his potential to be able to move, to get away, to flee, essentially, right? But not flee because he wasn't charged with anything. So it wouldn't have really necessarily been him fleeing. They couldn't restrict his movement really. So they had to do something to try to restrict it. And I felt like it was something way more serious. And the thing that I felt like was way more serious was the investigation in the murder of Tupac Shakur, right? That's what I felt like was the more serious thing. From the moment Keefe D was arrested, I felt like that's the avenue. Well, we've known for years that they were kind of going into that avenue, looking at Puff. But from the moment they went in and investigated Keefe D, I was like, okay, I feel like that they feel like they are getting closer to going to go get Puff, right? And I felt like the arrest of Keefe D was to get Puff, right? That was the effort to get Puff. And I think that that was the real thing that they wanted to move in on. But because Keefe D thwarted their plan by coming up with this defense that the whole story was a lie, they felt like they were going to get more from Keefe D. And now Keefe D has come up with this defense. And so I felt like they were trying to buy time to see if they could get Keefe D to cooperate and give them more. Well, in the documentary, Greg Caden kind of confirms that, yes, that is kind of what they thought. He says in the documentary, when Vegas moved in on Keefe D, we thought that we had Puff then. We thought we could get him then, right? But now that Keefe D is now saying none of this was true, all of it's a lie. They told me to say this. They told me to do that. I was only doing this to make money. That is disturbing them being able to go in to get Puff. And so I think that all of this had to do with the flimsiness of the federal case. Now, I still hold true that if I was a juror, we would have had a hung jury because I saw the RICO, right? But I do see how some jurors did not see it. But I do think that that may have been some of why we saw some of the flimsiness in this case in a way, because they thought that they would be able to get more from Keefe D, the Keefe D investigation and indictment, and they did not yield that from Keefe D because now he's coming up with this defense of it was all a lie for me to make money. That's it. And so based on Greg Caden's comments in the documentary, I think that that is what they really wanted to really kind of to pull in this RICO as part of this RICO. I think that was one of the another thing that they were going to try to attach, and they could not really add that into it some kind of way. That's just my opinion. So if you guys didn't already, or if you did watch the documentary, let me know what you guys think about that. But I took Greg Caden's comments to me. Yes, they were expected way more from that Keefe D indictment that would lead them to Puff and arrest of Puff and a charge of Puff. And then it did not deem satisfactory because it did not come out to be what they thought, because Keefe D decided that he was going to put this defense and not flip the script and give them the confirmation that he had given them previously about Puff, right? So that was one thing that I found interesting about the documentary as well, was that tie-in of Keefe D. I'm trying to think, did I leave? There's something else that was in there that I wanted to talk about that I can't that I right now is slipping my mind. But generally, that's what my overall consensus is that I felt like that the documentary was good. I felt it was well professionally done. I do not see any of the things that some of the people allege about why 50 Cent did this, thing. On Good Morning America's interview, 50 Cent says, listen, I placed two of Diddy's sons in two of my major projects. Like, so for all of the people who say that he's a hater, like Diddy's sons agreed to work with 50 Cent. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I'm not saying 50 not a hater in some respects. He probably is. I can't take up for him in that way. But as far as this documentary was done, I think it was done in a way with information that we had heard before. I think it was done with some receipts that some of us may not have seen before. I think that the footage that was provided, the visuals that we were given, confirmed to us what some of us already believe and know about this person. And I don't think that it was told in an untruthful way, right? if the only person in the documentary that was there that still got love for Diddy, that still maintains they didn't see some of these other uh negative things about Diddy, was Kalina. She was there. She was the voice who was able to be there to say, I'm going to speak on his behalf. And she said in the documentary, she let him know it was wrong. Like, you was wrong. I felt like you was wrong because you know how I ride for you. And you know what type of situation I was in. And you know I needed that money. You know what I'm saying? You know, and you know what kind of L I'm going to take for speaking up for you in this moment. Essentially, she's saying, like, nigga, now I'm already financially strapped, but me speaking up for you is going to put me in a worse situation, because then people really not going to want to work for me. But I'm still, according to her, I'm still going to do the right thing. You know, she didn't confirm whether she got no payment from him in that moment or not. So we don't know. That's what I'm saying. She was a voice for him, because she didn't come out and say, I got money from him to give these statements. She didn't say that. But she did say that she G-checked him, though, about it. Like, you know I ride for you. That's why you come to me and asking me this. But in my moment of need, you couldn't look out for me. But now you want me to look out. And me looking out for you is going to possibly put me in a worse financial situation, because now a lot of people might not want to work with me. What little work I could find now, I'm probably not going to be able to even get. But I'm still willing to do it because of my love for you. I'm going to still come out here and do it. You know what I'm saying? That voice was there. He had a voice. She was the voice. So anybody watching the documentary and saying that, oh, it was one-sided and no, Kalina maintained that throughout this time. Up until now, I haven't seen any statements saying that she's saying anything different. You know? So there was someone there, the one brave person. She was probably the one brave person willing to still come in onto this documentary and speak on his behalf. It's sad that other brave people in his life didn't come forward to speak on his behalf in the documentary, because people were given an opportunity. It makes you wonder, why didn't they? Why didn't they come forward? Why didn't other people in his life who from afar and give statements now that the documentary is done, why didn't they come forward to speak on his behalf in the same way in which Kalina did in the documentary? That's what you should really be asking. That's what I think those people who feel like it was quote unquote bias should really ask. Why didn't those people come forward and contribute to the project? Because Kalina was given an opportunity to contribute to the project, and she did. So those are my opinions about the documentary. Red Bunny and Miller, thank y'all for coming in today and talking with me through it, giving me y'all opinions. Anybody else listening on the replay, leave your questions, comments, suggestions, concerns in the comments. I will respond to them. It was nice coming in and talking to you guys again today. And the next time, I don't know when the next time I'll jump on, because I just do it random. But it'll be another hot topic that I will be coming on to talk to you guys about. You all have a blessed day. Peace.